So we have just returned from Chicago, where we organized the Xculture Research Hackathon. And a lot of colleagues have been asking me what those research hackathons are, how we organize them, why we do them, what are the plans. So let me share that with you in this short video. The first hackathon was organized, I believe it was 2017 in Miami. We have organized, I believe, about 15 or 16 of them, usually twice a year. I cannot claim all of the credits. Wendy Farrell has been extremely instrumental in organizing and delivering these events, but also Justin Kramer helps a lot, and Bob Stevens is also involved in managing the logistics. And so let me tell you what the original idea was and how it has evolved over time. So the main idea was dictated by the need to do research, but also by the fact that doing research often, or usually always, requires deep, focused, uninterrupted, intensive work. The reason it takes months or even years to complete a study is not because you need months or years, but because you need so many hours of this focused, uninterrupted, deep, intensive work. And under normal conditions, when we are at work in our offices, you get those constant interruptions. You would work for a few hours today, then you take a break, sometimes of a few weeks, then you work some more, then you take a break, then you work some more. And so that's why it extends over months or even years before the study is completed. With the research hackathons, we thought we would focus like 50 or maybe even 100 of hours of actual, honest, deep, intensive work into a few days. You would do nothing but research from early in the morning till late at night for those few days and develop a paper from the initial idea to the finished draft over this research hackathon. Kind of like a writing retreat, but with the difference being that instead of writing, you actually go from the study idea all the way to the research design, to looking at the data, maybe running some initial analyses, and actually trying to write something towards the end. Now, that idea has evolved somewhat, and we do it slightly differently now. So this is how we do them. First, we would limit the number of participants to about 12 to 15 people. We had 17 in Chicago. It was fine. We had a nice big round table where everybody fits around the table. But the optimal number probably is a dozen, maybe to 15 or so. We would have a few meetings online before the event where people can share, sort of what our research interests are, what kind of work we usually do, and what kind of studies we have in mind for the research hackathon, so that people can get a general idea who would be the potential co-authors, what would be the potential topics, but we don't make any decisions until the first meeting on the ground. Then once we arrive to the hackathon, so here we will have several days of basically nothing but research, with breaks for some fun. Like we would normally have like a fun dinner. In Chicago, we went on this sailboat to see the Chicago at sunset. We always, or almost always, stay at dormitories, like literally university dormitories. For example, in Chicago, we stayed at the dorms of Loyola University at Chicago. In Boston, a year before, we were at Emerson College dorms. Before that, it was University of Seattle in Seattle. So though the next year we are going to Copenhagen, and it will be in hotels. We already started making bookings. So we would have 2 of those a year, and usually one is right before the Academy of Management conference. So this way everybody goes to the Academy of Management anyway. The hackathon right before the event allows us to save on the need to have to fly twice to different events. But then also, after several days of research hackathoning, we have the several days of the conference, and so many research teams continue working on their papers. That allows them to complete even more. So you go, you present your paper, you attend some presentations, but then you also have some time between the sessions in the evening to keep working on your research project so you can accomplish more. Second, it actually does save us a lot of money. So, for example, hotels in Chicago, or before that in Boston or Seattle, we are looking at like conference hotels are like $250 to $350, even $400 a night. By staying at the dorms, we pay much, much less. Even with all of the cost of the facilities and food and everything, in the end, you end up spending less for the entire hackathon and conference than what you would spend only on the hotel if you went to the conference and stayed at the conference hotel. So plus again, staying at the dorms, it's a very nice sort of interesting experience where it's not only convenient to work on research, but you sort of become almost like a student again. Usually it is in the summer, so the dorms are empty, but you feel like a student, you stay in a real student, just like in the good old days when you were a student. So definitely it creates this additional collegial, fun environment, atmosphere. So you really, like reconnect with your younger self when you were a student. And occasionally it's kind of fun, like for example, in Seattle, and in fact, I believe that's the photo from Seattle. Not only did we have the entire dormitory to ourselves, so like a dozen of us, they had a grand piano in the lobby, and so we'd have like a karaoke at the end of the day. Some of us, like Lonju here, could play piano. But the main focus obviously is on research. And so we have some online meetings to sort of get us up to speed. But once we land at the location, so on day one, we brainstorm one more time the ideas for studies and decide on who does what. So basically, who will be working on which topic. And so that's when also research teams are formed. So as I said, ideally we want to have about a dozen people, probably 4 to 5 to 6 research projects, each with 2 or 3 co-authors. Like for example, in Chicago, there were seven research projects. And so each had 2-3 co-authors that worked on those projects together. And then, yes, so we start with ideas and then the teams go and work on those ideas. Then we meet again in a few hours, present the ideas to one another, get collegial but critical feedback. And again, many people here, most of the people, in fact, almost all of the people here are experienced researchers, many with editorial experience. So the kinds of people who will be your tomorrow's reviewers or editors when you submit that paper. So you get feedback that you are likely to get from editors and reviewers. And so you get that feedback, you go work some more on your idea, come back, present more. In many cases, teams also try to run some preliminary analyses, maybe some correlations, regressions, to see if the hypotheses sort of make sense, if the data support those hypotheses. And again, you go, you work, you present. You get feedback, you get suggestions, you go, you work, you present again. And so in those several days, we are able to go from essentially the initial idea to not the finished paper, but rather, here is what you will bring home. You will know exactly what your topic is. You will have your co-author list. So you will have 1, 2, 3 co-authors. You will distribute the workload. You will have the schedule. You know who does exactly what. You definitely will have all your research design fully worked out, criticized, worked out some more, and so you know precisely what that study will look like. You have your data. You already started looking at your variables and possibly even ran some analysis, and you already know whether or not your data generally support your hypotheses. You know what kind of analysis you do. Some teams even go as far as actually try to write the paper, though most stop at this point with a presentation of what they do, how they do it, who does what the idea is, research design, the preliminary analysis, kind of what you would normally have at the conference level stage. And then, yes, you go home, you continue working on your study. And then normally we aim to submit the finished paper for the Academy of Management and or Academy of International Business Conferences with the deadlines in January. So basically the hackathons are in the summer, and then you have another half a year to finish everything and submit it to a conference. And so many of these ideas have been published already. But what's wonderful, you get much more than just simply the idea that will become a paper. So here, because we stay in this close-knit group for usually over a week, once you add the hackathon and the conference, we have breakfast together, we have lunch together, we have dinner together, we do some fun things together, explore the city. So you develop very close relationships with these people. And so very often then what happens is people then become each other's co-authors on other projects. We have instances when people then become visiting professors at each other's university. Especially for younger colleagues, this is a wonderful opportunity to get your foot into this professional network. We normally have established professors at these events, but every time we would have a couple of PhD students for whom it's also a way to speed up your dissertation development process. So yes, the next one, as I said, will be in Copenhagen before the Academy of Management conference. And then another one we always do as part of the Xculture Global Business Week Symposium. So again, those are usually outside of the United States. The last one was in Thailand, in Chiang Rai, and the one before was in Canada. The one before was in Italy. That one, the event itself is a whole week long, but the hackathon, it's only a few hours every day. And so there are a few people who come specifically for the hackathon, but they also have access to the rest of the program. And so we would do some sightseeing and workshops and company visits and meetings with the CEOs and city mayors and things like that. But then we do a break, and then for a few hours we do research. And again, we would think about study ideas and develop them as much as we can in those several intensive hackathon sessions. Now, importantly, again, the topics do not have to be your traditional empirical hypothesis testing studies based on Xculture data. So as I said, the topics can be anything and everything. We will have likely data not only related to Xculture, but also maybe some other databases that could be used. But also we've had people who would work more on a sort of like a pedagogical type of research, or maybe more of a sort of conceptual paper, or a theory development paper, or more of a sort of how-to practitioner-oriented paper. Or even we had actually in Thailand, we had a group that decided to develop a textbook. And so they were designing and thinking about the process, how the textbook might be developed, written, and published. All of those are welcome ideas. Although most of the time it is your traditional sort of, this is my theory, these are my hypotheses, this is my data, this is how I will do the analyses, these are my preliminary results, and I will send that paper to AMJ or JAP or that kind of journal. And so here, as I was talking, you saw some photos from these different events. Like here is one from one of the first self-standing Xculture hackathons in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Justin organized that one. We always try to take a photo with our study ideas, and everybody takes that photo to see how many of them will have been published a year later and things like that. And so that's one of those where it looks like we had 4 paper ideas, and yes, some of them actually have been published. Like PPA, this one has been published in JIPS just a few months ago. So yes, if you're interested in joining us, as long as you're willing to put in that work, we are very open. The teams are usually very international. Like in Chicago, we had 17 people from 13 countries. And so, yeah, that's basically what we do. So hope you will join us for one of these future events. And if you would like to just send me an email, I'll send you more information.